My name is Dr. Joe McNamara, and it is my distinct pleasure to introduce two very dear friends of mine in Earthkeeper. It's Dr. Doris Christopher and Dr. Cheri Arnauld. And they're going to speak to us about cosmic connections, ancient knowledge meets spiritual science. I can't wait.
Thank you, Joe. I do have to say that we are all really like-minded, and Joe, your talk was fabulous. I feel like there was almost a new collective knowingness that kind of dumped down on consciousness about a year and a half ago, and we're all manifesting it in our own way, in our own gifts and talents. And I really wanted to start off by thanking both Ann and Tib, because they're very, very generous in their conferences and allowing many of us to get up here and share what's happening in our lives. And I've always appreciated the opportunity, and I wanted him to know that. And I also want to thank my friend Grace, because she was my book editor, and she's a very good book editor, and so I've asked her to be here today to talk about things a little bit.
I thought I would not have a friend anymore, but that was false. I mean, she took it all very, very well.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to jump in here
Sure.
and say that this is going to be our format. We're going to interrupt each other all the time, so it should be fun. But also the name change, which you see up there, I was birth name of Doris, but I was gifted the name, Hawaiian name a couple of years ago, Loko Maikai, which translates to grace. And I finally, about 6-7 months ago, realized that I need to own that name. So if you know me as Doris, that's fine. If you haven't met me before and you want to call me Grace, I would love it. So I'm drawing that into myself. So that's just a little sidebar.
She's stepped into her name, Grace. But I'm going to go back to her editing. She also does dissertations. And if any of you are writing a book, she really is very thoughtful about her questions, and my book is much stronger because of her. I get a lot of people who ask me, how did I come to this? And so I want to take just 2 minutes and tell you about kind of 3 sojourns. I've always wanted to go on, Vision Quest. I've done this for a very long time. And about 2 years ago, I left work for a while. I left higher ed. And I'm an academic. Doris is an academic. And I decided I needed to go to Costa Rica. So I flew in, went over the mountain to the east side, stayed at a yoga retreat, and I needed to see a shaman, by goodness. And so I found one. I found an interpreter. See if this works. Does that work? Do you see that on the screen? This is Fernando. Yeah, this is Fernando, and he was my interpreter, and he took me into the Bribri jungle on almost the border of Panama, and I met with this shaman. And it was before 12-12-12, and I kind of wanted to know what they thought, what they believed. And by the way, he did not believe the world was ending. But at the end of it, he did a little ceremony, and he let Fernando take pictures, and I was really amazed because he called just a few of his friends in, as you can see. And I didn't know what it meant, but it was very meaningful to me. I also had a sojourn where I had to go to Machu Picchu. How many of you have been to Machu Picchu? Okay, so I had to touch my forehead to the Intihuatana stone on the top because I'd read somewhere that it opened your third eye if you did that. So on the day that I was there, I just happened to do that, and my friends tell me I'm very thankful I'm not sitting in a Peruvian jail somewhere for doing that, but I did do that. I kind of thought, I was looking for, aha, now my pineal gland is open and I can see things. Well, of course, that's not the way it happened. So, but I would say that for those of you who know, this cliff here, let me see if I can get this. This cliff up here is where the Intihuatana stone is. And there is a place that celebrates the condor that's in the guidebooks. It is a separate place that they do ceremony, the beak and all of that. You go over there to see it. But as I was walking along that big causeway, I looked over and I said, oh my goodness, doesn't this whole cliff right here look like the snake, the puma, and the condor flying right out of the cliff? And I asked a couple of guides about that, and they just looked at me because it was not in the guidebook. No one, they had not seen it. But I was certain that this was the condor flying right out of the top of that cliff with its beak right there at me. I don't know if it meant anything. They just stared at me. I had to get on a bus and left. I've never heard anything more about it. The last one I want to mention was 1 year ago here at WESAC, and I had a session with Shana Ra. and Shauna Ra has sessions open, but this is what happened to me. And Grace and I were in a session together, and she looked over and she recognized, I don't know if you want to say anything, but anyway, she took this picture for me, and it was very, very profound. And when WESAC was over last year, I went home, and for 4 months, I wrote, and this book came out. And I knew the information that I wanted to say, but I wrote it through the lens of my 80-year-old parents who were going to read it, my children who I wanted to read it, and my friends who I had left academia for a while, and I wanted them to understand me, understand what I believed. So I wanted to find some really current research around all of it, every concept that we know about as Earth Keepers, to see if there was a way, not that anyone believed the way I did at all, but I just wanted them to go, And interestingly enough, my great friend, Greg Bartow, I know he's in here somewhere, said to me at Sequoia last year, you know, Cheri, we only ever talk to ourselves. So perhaps I just simply wrote it for me.
Okay, the first section of her book is about spirituality, and it's not dull, okay? What she does is she takes a look at religion and spirituality and says, in essence, that the concept of spirituality doesn't have to have anything tied to religion, which I know that you and I might know, but maybe others don't, because the first time you say spirituality to somebody that you're talking to that's not kind of in the flow, they will think religion. So religion may have nothing to do with spirituality, and it may. So the two may coincide, but religion can be separate from spirituality, and spirituality can be separate from religion. So she makes that point and talks about that a little bit. And we all are trying to live our truth. The truth is who we really are, and we're all on the path to discovering that. So spirituality, she tries to define, and she does a good job in the book of saying that what the book's trying to help you do is discover your own personal connection to spirituality between yourself, your soul, and your creator, your source, your God. Did you want to say anything about that last line?
No.
Oh, okay. So the law of one, we've heard about that before here at these conferences. It is an ancient spiritual sacred science, and was part of the civilization of Atlantis. So all consciousness, all oneness is a vibration or a frequency. And I left some question marks there, so think quietly in your head. So what can you name that frequency, that vibration? And if you said to yourself, love, that's it. So all consciousness and all oneness really is love. We always say, I am love, I am light. Well, there's a reason for that, because love is not just an emotion, as we commonly think of it. It is a frequency. So universe and all creation, in fact, is composed of two things, consciousness and another factor. So quietly think in your mind, what could be that other factor? Consciousness and if you said mathematics, thank you, Dr. Joe, or mathematics or pattern, you got that one right too. So all creation is consciousness and mathematics or pattern. So we come to the point of saying to ourselves, all is love. The law of one is all that is in its purest form. So you think of all that is, really, 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 is that frequency or that vibration. How come, as I have asked myself, how come if we're all one and we all partake of this frequency, how come we all don't have the same experiences? How come we're not all the same? Well, of course, it's free will. We have free will, and we express through our own individualized presences what it is that we want to experience. So we have choices, and that's a good thing, and that also gives us our challenges, I guess we'll say. So the law of one. I was rereading the book, and there was a page in there that said Christ consciousness. Okay, what is the energy of Christ consciousness? And I put that as a question. So what is that Christ consciousness energy? And in the book, she says that it is the energy of the one. So we're back to the law of one. We're still on the concept that we are all one. So Metatron tells us that in Atlantis, the highest levels of spirituality that were ever maintained or created on the planet were expressed in Atlantis. And Edgar Cayce says that the power of love is, magnificent. It is great. It is all. But in Atlantis, there grew to be a group, which we know as the Sons of Belial, that loved power. So the love of power overcame the power of love in that instance. And we already heard it today, and we heard it maybe yesterday, that all projected life, and for me, I've been reading subsequent to this book, projected life means to me something that is put out. So that is manifested life, precipitated into form. So all projected life comes from within. Whoa, we do that. All form is ourselves expressing outward. Did you want to add to that?
No. Just for me, the law of one means love, free will, and in that we have the power to co-create here on earth, and that is the essence of the law of one.
Wait.
Sorry.
Wait. Okay, so this rabbi she quotes in the book, he's in the middle of the 1500s, and he discusses duality and God. And he says things like, well, let God be God. Don't say to yourself that there is God up to a certain point, and then there's this stuff that's outside of God, because what you have done is separated yourself from God. So why create that separation? Don't let that stone that you perceive as a stone be somehow separate from God, because we are all one. We are all part of the whole. So what he suggests, and what Cheri sort of amplifies in the book, is that if you have separated yourself or anything else from the concept of the one, then you have dualized. Dang it, we're doing that. So creating the duality is something that we do and we continue to do. So we're all part of the material universe, and we're all part of thought. Thought, think in your mind, consciousness. So consciousness and thought. So we create with things, and we create with thought. But it's broader than thought. If we could just think and have it be, that's not how it works. We also operate to manifest with feelings in addition to thought, and especially with belief. So what you believe and what you feel and what you think are the keys. Okay, so Einstein wanted to develop the theory of everything. Did he do it, Cheri?
No, he died before it happened.
He died. But it's becoming understood now because of the investigations of quantum theory and quantum mechanics. So we come to the idea of string theory, and I'm sorry, Dr. Joe, if I murder this theory or just is not correct, but string theory to me, and from what I have read, is that all matter, really, when you look at it down to its deepest level, is little sets of individual strings, and each string vibrates. And if you look at the string in one way, it vibrates as something. If you look at it in another way, it vibrates as something else. So what does that tell you? How do you know what's true? Well, you know what's true because you're looking at it. So you create your perceptions. So you influence, you are the observer, and they have the influence of the observer on reality. So there we go, we create reality. So the strings, that theory says that after they applied 11 dimensions to the strings, I like this stuff, I don't know why I like this stuff. After 11 dimensions, the strings stretched out and became unified and created one unified field, a membrane. I like that word, membrane. So that was the beginning of theory. So that after a certain point, there was no individuation anymore. There is one field. So Cheri, tell us about this guy here.
Yeah, so I put Dr. John Hagelin in there. He's a physicist, and he's at Maharashi University in Iowa. And he is one person who talks a great deal about the unified field, this one fluid field. And he speaks about the fact that at the base of everything, we are all one. It is the science that we are all one. And amid all the diversity of the way we look, the color of our skin, how big we are, how tall we are, whatever, we are all one at its base. And he takes it one step farther to say, we are so missing the boat with our children in what we teach science. And it resonated to me because I am an educator and I did teach children for a long time ago, and I thought, wait a minute, we took a lot of time celebrating the differences in our cultures and things like that, and it hit me, oh my gosh, as long as we're celebrating our differences, we're celebrating the thought that we are different, and we're not, we're all one.
Okay, so after reading her book and getting my little cues and insights, especially about the quantum theory and those ideas, I was going to put in here this extension which she allowed me to do. And I got into reading material by and about the Elohim. And one little facet that I was reading about was raising your vibration. So vibration refers to the speed of the electrons. We have already heard about electrons at the conference here. Vibration is the speed at which the electrons spin around the central core of the atom. So if that's a definition of vibration, then what is it that's different, or what is the main difference between an unascended body, such as yours and mine, and an ascended body like that of an Elohim or an ascended master? And that is the speed or the rate at which the electrons spin around the central core of the atom. So when they talk about raising your vibration, they're talking about this. They're talking about not something strange or unreal. They're talking about increasing the speed of the electrons as they spin around the central core of the atom. So I put this slide in here because it shows the I Am presence in the correct 7 colors. This is from the Ascended Masters Teaching Foundation. 7 colors of the 7 rays. One of the rays has both ruby and gold, so if you count them, it kind of looks weird. But so why is it that our vibrations are different? Well, there is this thing called the effluvia of discord. And the effluvia of discord is shadows or shadowed substances that act like a blanket, and they're around our electrons, and they weigh down our electrons so that they don't have the necessary speed. So how did they get there? Well, discord. So we have paid attention in many of our lifetimes and all these things that we experience to mental discord, read TV, newspapers, certain conversations, or emotional discord, fear, which was mentioned earlier, anger, those kinds of things. Those attentions that we pay attention to, those discords weigh down our electrons, and they reduce the speed around the central core of the atom. I found this quite interesting. So how do you deal with that? How do you change that? And the book I was reading on the Elohim suggests that you do it in 2 major ways, and one would be use of the 7th ray, the violet ray of transformation and change, and then the other one would be the increase of focusing on the speed, or the purity rather, of the electrons. And that is the 4th ray, the white crystal ray in the scheme here. So focusing on change or focusing on purity. Don't take out your bucket and your scrub brush and you say, those shadows there, I'm going to scrub those till they're gone, because then you're focusing on that. And we do that focus thing all the time. So instead of focusing on what you don't want, I'm going to scrub it till it's clean, and your focus is there. Focus instead on the purity of the electrons, and that's what the Elohim would suggest.
And I was really glad that she did that, because one of the things I wanted from the book is for people to take elements of it. It is a primer of everything we know, touched to the most current science that I could find, that people that I knew could relate to. So talk about consciousness even. We all know what consciousness is, but was there any science? And I was shocked. I live here in Scottsdale, but at the University of Arizona in Tucson, there's a complete consciousness center. And I learned that there are many scientists who are studying consciousness all the time. In fact, they have wonderful conferences down there, and they study, and it's very academic. Not many of them really go into a spiritual realm, though. But they do, you know, one person did in New Zealand. A woman talked about the patterning of consciousness being the same pattern that was in the electromagnetic field. And I found that fascinating because our electromagnetic field then interacts with consciousness all the time, which we know. And heart math also tells us that what we send out is about a mile around us. And grandmother yesterday was exactly right when she had us blow it out our heart, because the heart is the portal. It sends out your love essence 60 times greater than our head. So when we talk about prayer circles and we talk about healing circles, the heart and sending out that frequency, remember, that vibration of love is absolutely key. And consciousness happens through the EMF field. So I thought, okay, well, you know, indigenous people lived very centered in their consciousness and in their love presence, and one with the earth and one with the universe. Why do we struggle so much with that today? Why do we struggle so much to be the person that we're supposed to be in our space? And I realized, oh my gosh, we have disruptors all over the place in our electromagnetic field. And I am so glad that George Norrie went here yesterday, because I really worried about how to go here. I am not somebody who buys into a fear space at all. But I do believe that as light workers, we have to be aware, and we have to be the ones to hold the space to combat these kinds of things. So cell phones, the World Health Organization knows that low levels of radiation are affecting brains and brain cancer. And anyone who has their phone up to their head for a long period of time, you know how hot it is. And healers, you know when that phone is in your hand, you feel it connect to the internet. You feel that vibration to it. We can't live without our cell phones, but I very rarely ever put it up to my head anymore. And even we remember that transient electronics in our wires, our electrical wires were key. But what struck me was it's only been 125 years that we've had electricity on this planet. And this is a very old planet. And it's only been since the 1990s that there was so much transient electricity on those wires that they put poles into the ground in order to take the dirty electricity down into Gaia. And I don't know that we still have any idea. And Doris and I have, Grace, and I have many conversations about this because, you know, the earth will take care of herself. Mother Earth will absolutely take care of herself, but it is something that we do need to be aware of. So what can we do about it? The healers here know it's important to clear your chakras. It's important to clear your energy field. It's important to do those healing treatments on a regular basis just to keep clear so that we can stay resonant in our love vibration and what we send out. And intentional thought, we can do so much in our own blessing of the world, our space around us, our homes, and so forth. But most importantly, and I ask this all through the book with every piece of this that I put out, do your own research and decide what's right for you, your family, your children, your parents, and you. Thank you. And then when you move all of this into the quantum world, and you know, Joe's exactly right. Quantum, you know, our reality is so shallow. What I'm looking at right now is simply a picture that I have created in my own brain. And I'm deciding what that looks like. I really don't know if my picture in my brain is the same thing she's seeing right now.
No way.
We really don't know. And we can both experience things and go through the very same thing and come away with complete different takeaways. But what they have seen is that observer piece, that if I look at something, I can make it change. We absolutely co-create all the time. And even more interesting was the new science of memetics. And memetics is about seeding consciousness. And I know Tib talked about it before, the movie Inception, where they seeded a thought down into a subconscious. But there's a book out called The Selfish Gene, and they actually seed thoughts into our collective consciousness. And I don't even want to say they, but thoughts are seeded into our collective consciousness from many, many different places. Some good for us and some not so good. We are programmed constantly through our televisions and other things. It's not about being afraid of it. It's about understanding it so that we can put it in perspective into our lives and stay resonant in our own space and in our own spirituality. The other interesting thing was 2 things are entangled forever through quantum entanglement. They're linked forever through quantum entanglement. And when you move something far away, what happens to one happens to the other. Even if they teleported an electron somewhere else, what happened to one happened to the other. And that has some real implications about who we are in our spirit self and our higher selves. Perhaps we are intrinsically linked forever in the quantum field. And I wanted, my family to understand that we actually do have light bodies. There are biophotons of light within every piece of our DNA. And but research does believe now that our nervous system is almost like the fiber optic highway that carries these light pieces all over. And a study at MIT just recently found that they are communicating. There's an almost binary communication that's happening between our cells. They don't know what it means yet, but they do know that it's happening. And then I had a section on sacred geometry because it was important to me. I'm not going to take the time to go through all of it, but it does tell the story of creation in a little different way and how everything is replicated. Everything is pattern and geometry and replication. But when the geometry happens so that you have the one circle and in its infinite wisdom it duplicated to the other circle, and we had the divine feminine and the divine masculine, that in this center space, if I can get this, in this center space right here is the Vesica Pisces. And as these circles continue to replicate, and we had the flower of life and all the platonic solids come out of that, even reproduction on this planet happens this way, really, with no exception. But the Vesica Pisces had several different meanings that were interesting to me. And if you were in Sequoia, you've probably heard me say this already. But one, it was in art forms, all through cathedrals and stuff of old. Another, it's the sign of Christianity and a way that Christians, after the crucifixion, knew one another. And it's also the sign of creation, the birth, everything birthed out of that intersection between the two circles. And we see that in the shape of female genitalia. And when I was in Greece with Earthkeeper, actually, we were in a temple, and every piece of wall was painted, mostly with misery and martyrdom. But the top of the cathedrals were all wonderful and angelic, and I looked up, and there was the Vesica Pisces, two circles intersecting like this, and they had wings on them very much like this. And I looked up and I said, oh my gosh, on the top of a cliff in Greece, in the 1400s, monks knew this, and they drew it. And the last thing was, it was a source of great power. And I was trying, many things about my book kind of just came, and I was trying to think, how could I depict a source of great power for the Vesica Pisces? And on my computer jumps the Hubble telescope. And I'll be darned if we don't have nebula all over the universe creating itself within the Vesica Pisces, creating new worlds, new experience, or new galaxies everywhere. So we have this connection, numbers, science, Fibonacci. Joe talked a lot about those. I won't go in. Other than you see this pattern everywhere in nature, we don't take the time to go look. Nature is a very grounding energy for us, and walking out in nature and looking for these things remind us to help stay centered in our spirituality and our connectedness. And the most amazing mathematical discovery to me happened in the late 70s by, I think his name is Benoit Mandelbrot, and he discovered fractals. And fractals, to me, are really a big part of the patterning of the geometry that we have in the universe. And what a fractal is that if you take one tiny little point and we pull it out, it has the same shape of the whole. If you pull it out again, it has the same shape of the whole. Or the other way, you could go down and it has the same shape of the whole, or down further and it's the same shape of the whole.
By down you mean more microscopic,
yes,
more tiny.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
We are in between the big and the small, exactly. And the thing about this that really struck me is if we put fractals in the quantum world, along with our spirit and our self, who is entangled with us intrinsically forever, and we're all sparks of the one, perhaps we do have a spirit that has fractally come through time, that when we meditate, we truly are connecting with our higher selves and pieces of ourselves that are experiencing this world and others all along the way. And finally, the last thing I really want to mention is like Tib, I believe water is the key. If anyone comes looking in our universe, in our galaxy for a planet, they're coming to ours, and it's because of water. And we are a water planet. Our bodies are 80% water, and our bodies, water is a conductor. Every bit of energy that we are around constantly gets migrated through our body and through water. And our water is not necessarily pure. And I was really glad that yesterday George went through two things. One was our water and the fluoride in our water and what it does to the pineal gland. And the other one is genetically modified food, which I can't imagine anyone in this room not really knowing what genetically modified food is. But if you don't, it's really important to find that out. But anyway, water, then also our bodies then are affected by all thought, as depicted by Emoto's work, all music depicted by Emoto's work, and all the disruptors that we come around in our lives. So what does all this mean?
Well, we could just say it in those words: be empowered through information. So Cheri's book takes you through many different facets, and she's presented those today. And I learned a lot just by reading her book, even though the titles of the chapters looked very familiar to me. So we are empowered by making sure we understand and come from a point of knowledge. And this increases our, such as environmental awareness, as she's listed there. So do your own research. That's her theme as she talks about it through the book. Set your own ideas of what spirituality is, and you use your own gifts and your own talents as you progress and change.
And lastly, implications for spirituality. I loved Adrienne on her first night when she said perhaps she's going to come back and be a spiritual warrior for social justice. And Grace and I have talked a lot about this. How do we be who we need to be in the world, recognizing the things that need to be changed for all of humanity, yet not buy into that fear factor, that fear essence, because we don't want to make it so, but we do want to recognize it's there and do our part as light workers or our own resonant beings to do what we can in order to help our planet move to the next level.
And I'm just going to say, being aware doesn't mean you have to start carrying a sign and saying, this is bad, 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 this, I don't like this, because you're putting all your energy into that instead of how would that change? How would you refocus? So that talks about our creating the law, the second golden age, because what we are doing now is stepping into what we are creating. So if our focus is on what we want and what we are creating, then we are automatically going to receive that. Right. Not automatically, it's going to take some work. But,
right,
so.
And I did just want to say too that, I just lost it. Go ahead.
Well, it's there on the slide. Be what you say you are. Now that's a little more difficult than it sounds, and that's what we're practicing on doing. But the last thing we wanted to come into is that we have focused on the I am, I am, I am. And now, with the law of one really right in front of us, our focus should be this, the we are.
that it's time for us to be the we are. And I remember what I was going to say. That is, we have been so focused on lifting the veil, and the veil was to the etheric. And we've done a great job at that. We've been practicing that for a long time, and some of you have heard me say before, we know what to do. We don't always do what we know. However, I was shocked that for me, and what this was about was lifting the veil and stepping into me as to what was happening right underneath my nose in the world today. So I hope that we can all join together and be a part of the We Are. And thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very much.